your body is either a river, it's either flowing healthy, or it's a swamp. And most people now are a swamp. Being in symptom or devoid of symptom doesn't mean you're healthy or not. Same person who feels great on Monday and croaks of a heart attack on Tuesday, they weren't healthy on Monday. They just didn't know they weren't healthy. Right. People just think chiropractic is your back hurts, your neck hurts. But it goes way deeper than that. I was just always interested in how to hack the human body to improve, so it worked.
When you know you're put on this earth to do like great, extraordinary things, and then you feel like you still haven't really done that yet, yeah. So then you're always just pushing. Right.
Everyone's reaching these moments of achievement and then quickly the next thing. Mm-hmm. So the goalposts always move. And it's really unrewarding because you just have consistent achievement and then next thing. Mm-hmm. You don't really get to celebrate like your wins, and that's really, problematic. And the build out took a year and a half. It was a nightmare. I went 3 times over budget. My checking account was at 0. My credit cards were maxed out. It was horrifying. But what I did know was that I knew it would work. If you would have shown me what things look like now, then I would be doing cartwheels, crying, hysterical. And now, like, things are very good, but I'm still kind of like, oh man, what's the next thing?
No, I want to take us back a little bit because I was trying to remember when I met you, like when we met, and I can't put a finger on it. so help my memory.
That was 2012.
Yeah.
2011 or 2012. So I had a practice in Kendall.
Okay.
And I was going to build out the practice on the beach. This is pretty interesting. So I worked for this guy for 7 years, real close. Went to his family's parties, bar mitzvahs, adjusted his kids.
Yeah.
So eventually I'm like, hey man, I'm building this place out on the beach. This is really exciting. He goes, oh, that's great. You're fired. You got a week. And I was like, oh, that's great. It's really exciting. So what ended up happening was Kevin, who was my best friend from chiropractic school,
yeah,
at the time was working.
Kevin Christie, right?
Kevin Christie was working with Alex, where you guys were connected. So he let me at the time. I worked rented a space, so like 2 days a week or whatever, Tuesday and Thursday, while I was building the office and built that up.
Were you in the space next to me?
Yeah, with Larry.
Okay, all right.
And then
I don't know why I don't remember that specifically.
Then we met, and Larry and I were a little bit different, obviously, and it was just an easy situation.
No, I remember when you first like worked on me and like kind of gave me your take on. So I've been. As you know, I've been going to chiropractor since I was like 3 years old. So I know, like you almost have an instant, you just know. And it was interesting because being in Miami, I had gone to several that I just like completely walked out of and were like just the wrong fit.
Well, chiropractic is interesting. There's this vitalistic type of chiropractor. You know it when you see it. Good hands, focus, understanding how the body works. Then there's these like still good, but like jack of all trade, do a little acupuncture, do a little chiropractic, do a little stretching, kind of guys where the chiropractic gets lost.
Right.
So they're good at a lot of things, but they're not great at some things. And there are a need for these type of chiropractors, but pretty quickly when I meet like an old school chiropractor, some like old guy with like gnarly like grimy hands, I get adjusted instantly because they've just got years of this like beautiful ability. And it's not like to talk myself up, but when you meet someone who's who's good,
like I've even had my chiropractor at Auburn was a teeny little girl. Like she was like 5'3", but she was literally adjusting all our football players, like these huge guys, but she just had it. She just knew how to do it.
It's not even power at all. In fact, when you try to be strong, you get hurt. It's about speed and precision and intent and focus. So when you meet someone, it doesn't matter how big they are. Some of the biggest guys can't, adjust a baby. Which is pretty interesting.
So take us back to when did you know that's what you wanted to do? Like when? Yeah.
Since I was little, I always said I wanted to be in sports medicine. Since I can remember. Well, first I wanted to be a football player, but it didn't work out. There's not very many Jewish football players. So sports medicine was always it. That's what I wanted to do. Got to college. I was in sports medicine, pre-med. And the intent was just go to medical school.
And where'd you go to college?
To Florida State.
Okay.
So the intent was just to go to med school and figure it out. So I signed up for pre-med. I'm going through it or whatever. About 2 years in, I was this is such a dumb story. I was in the gym working out. And I was doing like one of the neck machines. And this girl walks by who ended up becoming my girlfriend. This gets really weird. So I like doing the neck machine. I see her, and my neck I just feel this like rip like in my neck, and I can't. I'm like freaking out. I can't turn it.
So you hurt yourself because you were checking out a chick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real bad. It was
Classic.
bad.
Classic male move.
So a couple days go by. I'm dealing with it. It's getting worse. I was working at Chili's at the time in school. I was a cook.
Chili's, nice.
And I couldn't work. It was like that Batman, kind of thing. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't drive because you can't like turn. It was horrifying. So it gets worse. This chiropractor comes and speaks to one of our classes. It was kind of like a career day thing. He explained how it worked. And I like went up to him. I was like, hey man, this is real bad. What can you do? So he has me come by his office, kind of explains it. Boom, just like the lights are like back on, like instantly back on.
Yeah.
Wild. So then I was like, okay, well, I should be a chiropractor. Turns out that girl, we meet again, we start dating. Her father is a chiropractor, which is really interesting.
Yeah, wild.
Kevin, who's my roommate at the time, is interested in chiropractic. So we just got kind of like really hyped up into it. And it was all just a bunch of serendipities that kind of led me to it.
So you knew Kevin in college?
College, yeah.
Oh, wow.
We were roommates in college.
Ah.
Yeah, which is pretty wild. He graduated a year before I did. I had that, freshman experience where it took 5 years. But after that, it was good. So he left early, went to another school, and the one I ended up going to, which was in Texas, was more of a vitalistic school. So that's why he and I are a little different. He's more like of a sporty chiropractor, more of a vitalistic chiropractor. And then it just led everything. It all just kept leading, to that, and it made sense because it was sports medicine, but it was more into what I was into. I was still never, even as a child or in college, I was never into medicine. I was trying to like biohack before biohacking. Okay. So, what supplements could you take to make yourself improve? What techniques could you do? I was just always interested in how to hack the human body to improve. So it worked, and I didn't know what chiropractic was. People just think chiropractic is your back hurts, your neck hurts. But it goes way deeper than that, which, ended up being a great thing. So it was a perfect fit. And it just, I'm a big believer in serendipities and opportunities, and things will consistently show up in your life. And then if it's obvious enough, you just keep acting on it. Always.
So let's just lean into the whole chiropractic world because that's your expertise. Yeah. Can you debunk some common chiropractic myths and explain how chiropractic care is both real and helpful? One of the things I'll just go ahead and say is that, to your point earlier, chiropractic goes a lot more deeper. Like when we used to get sick as kids, my dad didn't take us anywhere except straight to the chiropractic office.
Yeah.
And he was, and then it was one of those old school chiropractic guys. And he would explain to us, like, if our body's not in alignment, then it messes with your immune system and blah, blah, blah. And this is, I'm talking like, this is like age 5 and 6, So just lean into some of the, because every single time someone comes up to me with a problem in the gym, the first thing I say is you. Yeah. And they're always like, oh, they're always like horrified. They're like, oh, chiropractor. Like, so kind of let us know some of the bull crap out there.
Chatting about it, a little bit earlier. Chiropractic since the beginning, which in the United States was at like the late 1800s, was never about neck pain and back pain, ever once. In the last couple decades, because of insurance coverage, they started fitting chiropractic into this medical model in this kind of box where insurance would cover chiropractic if you came in for neck pain or back pain, and it would allow you this. So they, over time, coerced chiropractors. If you wanted to get reimbursed, you had to work within this medical model. So the conversation has changed over the years. So when people think of chiropractic, think of neck pain and back pain, but it was never, ever really about that. Now, can you help those things? Of course. It's very entry level and kind of like low hanging fruit, but that does get people in your door, But the general gist is you have to take a couple things into account. Do you believe that the body has like an innate ability to heal itself? If you believe in that, which people should, I understand that medicine is obviously important at times, then how does that happen? So there's just the simple relationship between the brain and the nervous system, in the body. the brain is well connected through the spinal cord out to the body, then this is how our body coordinates, itself. When I was telling her earlier, so if someone's neck hurts and they have secondary symptoms, it might be tingling in their arms. Well, that's just a nerve being inflamed or irritated as it comes out of the body. But that same nerve could also coordinate or control. It can cause headaches because of blood flow. It could cause fogginess because of the disconnect between the brain and the body. It can cause irritability. It can cause stress. It can cause sleeping disorders. It can cause a backup of your sinuses. In little kids, it can cause ear infections. But the general idea is that as you go down the spine, each nerve doesn't just control muscles. It controls an end organ, meaning that there's limitless things that you could treat because the chiropractor isn't a magical guy treating the problem, they're treating the body and then allowing the body to, on its own, work through itself and heal, which is why people do so much better. But common things that people come in for or don't come in for but find that they do better with, heartburn and reflux is incredibly common because of the stress that people have and how the nerves in the upper back affect that. Sexual
Heartburn, really?
It's crazy, almost every other patient. Yeah. Sleeping disorders, digestive issues, sexual dysfunction, fertility issues, especially as it relates to the low back. There was a really wild study. Harvard did it. It was, I can't remember the name. I'll send it to you. You can put it in the notes. But ultimately, they took cadavers, and what they did was they figured out whatever the person died from. So something where there was organ issues, and what they did was they traced that organ back to through the nerve back to where it originated from, and in every single case that disc was completely fried, burned out, degenerated, arthritic every single time. And the understanding is that inflammation, that stress on the body just kind of chokes off that nerve and it doesn't kind of work to that end organ. And this is how these kind of things happen. Now, this doesn't mean that you can heal and fix everything. This is why we have chiropractic. This is why we have modern medicine. This is why we have osteopaths, because all together we can work it. But our whole goal is just to go back to that original nerve source and get it to flow appropriately. The cheesiest analogy is your body is either a river, it's either flowing healthy, or it's a swamp. And most people now are a swamp. They're stagnant, they're sickly, they're not moving, in the world they're not exercising, and the whole chiropractor's goal is just to kind of wake that up, get their body to start connecting and flowing again, and you feel it instantly. A patient will feel just instantly, their vision gets bright because of the optic nerve, they sleep better that night. I would say 85% of my patients are not sleeping throughout the night when they start, and the first night they sleep instantly and they're freaked out by it, but it's just because you're turning your body off of sympathetic, which is that overdrive fight or flight response, and into parasympathetic so they can heal and rest and relax. We're not supposed to be sympathetic all the time. It's reserved for hunting and gathering and getting away from a predator. It's not reserved for what we have now, which is 24/7. Stress is crazy right now, and this is one of the things that is really causing huge problems in the world. So at its base, when someone's adjusted, the brain feels that kind of biofeedback, the body relaxes, and you get this parasympathetic response, which is how healing happens. It's how you get into deep sleep. It's how you produce growth hormone. It's how you bring cortisol levels down in the body. So it's cool, and it's not that I'm individually doing that. I'm just giving the body a chance to heal on its own. That's kind of how it works.
Very cool. And then as far as like people getting scared of the adjustment, what would you say because that is the number one reaction I get every single time is, oh my God,
Well, yeah, it's common. I was nervous the first time I got adjusted. The first thing is that the noise that you hear is not bones crunching or cracking. That doesn't actually happen. The noise is what's called cavitation, which is this release of gases between the joints. And when they move, there's this kind of release. It's similar to if you pulled your finger. When that joint moves, you hear this cavitation, gas releases, the body kind of starts to flow better, and that's what's happening. People think they're getting cracked. There's a place, I'm not going to say the name, but there's a place with a crack in the name, this chiropractic place, and it's not that. And also, the way that people should really be getting adjusted, and the things like what you expect, that's like some sort of Chuck Norris karate movie, your head is turning around. It's not that at all. It's very minimal, very specific movements to create movement within the joint in a way that's both impactful, but the body can take it and not have resistance, because people can be overstimulated. If you watch some YouTube video of somebody adjusting 85 segments on somebody and doing 20 different therapies, it can be overwhelming because you're just putting too much information into the body. It would be like going to the gym and doing arms and legs and calves and back all at the same time. It's too much. That's kind of how it works. So that sensation feels good and it's safe. And the chiropractor's job is to work with the patient so that you guys can kind of, as a unit, create the healing, that you're not overwhelming or overbearing on the person or trying too hard. And again, just knowing how to adjust appropriately so that it's done in a way that's accepted and relaxing. That you don't have to be some like overbearing, like ogre, like crushing people because it looks cool on TikTok. Like there's a lot of that happens.
I mean, you do that with me. It's like sometimes when I come in and I feel my worst, you're the, I don't know if gentler is a word, but it's a Southern word. So you're more gentle with me. Yeah. And then when I come in feeling good, then that's when you kind of bear down and give me a little bit more.
And some people can be adjusted aggressively, but more, physically. But more often than not, it doesn't require power. It requires speed and precision and understanding when the body is the most relaxed. Even when someone's really tight and tense and they kind of tense up, there's always this moment when you can feel when they're going to relax and you adjust in that. So it's an art. Chiropractic is a science, certainly, but it's an art as well. And it's a skill that has to be built. I'm certainly better at 45 than I was at 27. Mm-hmm. And I expect to be better at 65 than I was at 45, assuming my hands are still working at that point.
And you're correct me if I'm wrong, like your continual education when it comes out, you're constantly going to like stuff and
I'll show up to
learning
seminars with students. Yeah. I'll show up to seminars with a bunch of kids. There's always something you can learn. The practice and the philosophy still remains the same. I'm not really the guy who's looking for the new technology because I don't really, even though patients can do well with machines, chiropractic means done by hand in Greek. So I still feel like it should be human on human.
I don't want a robot to give me an adjustment.
I'm sure AI is going to do something with it eventually, but they've done this over the years, all these different machines that do certain things. Even those, something like a massage, like I prefer a human's hands than one of those vibrating chairs, the same kind of rule. So you have to always be educating yourself because there's stuff that, we're not perfect. You're always going to learn more. I'm sure you do the same.
Of course, you have to. I mean, you got to be constantly learning. So leaning into that, one thing, again, this is obviously a personal thing because I'm one of your clients. Yeah. So one of the things that I notice every single time I go in, and I like to observe and stuff, is that you have a very good knack or great knack at making us all feel like we're the only patient. And very few people do that, like especially in a setting where you're seeing so many people. And I think like really good personal trainers, doctors, lawyers, like anybody that has like a waiting room of people if you can figure out how to make them feel like they're the only one in the room, then I think you're doing something special. So is there anything that like, what do you do? What's your secret sauce? Like, why do you feel like, because I'm telling you like from hands-on experience and also I've sent you a lot of people and they all come back and they all feel special. And, so you have something really good there. Great there. Like, what do you think about it?
Well, I was kind of talking to Amber about this earlier. First and foremost, this isn't an office where whoever calls enters the door. We pre-screen to an extent that we want people who want to be there primarily, that are on board with the process, that understand that it's going to take time. And we're also, if the energy isn't right, we're not necessarily going to always accept that patient. So we start out by ensuring that the network of people in the office, because we do open adjusting, meaning that people will be seeing what everyone else is doing. It's always going to be congruent and it's the right type of person.
Is there a philosophy behind the openness? Because you do go to some chiropractic offices and it's like in a massage room. Like y'all's, you have three tables in the middle of the space.
It helps because it allows other patients to hear kind of conversations that could pique their interest in things that they weren't aware that could be treated. Mm-hmm. I'll adjust babies in the office, and someone will be like, "Wow, I didn't know you did babies," or a lot of a bunch of different conditions. It really helps. It's also much more efficient, obviously. A busy chiropractor will see on average. A really busy chiropractor up to 100 patients, in a day. Right. So if you're having to go from room to room to room, you're going to get stuck in there, at times. Which is problematic. But more so, what I try to do is, first and foremost, you have to learn the person's name and know their name. People they're not used to getting their name said ever. Like how many people throughout the day, they go through the day, they go to work, and they'll get a chief or a buddy every now and then, and then maybe they'll go home. But that's a really interesting feeling. When someone just says, "Hey, Manning," or "Hey, Jordan," that's a good, feeling. And I really do, and that's a skill you have to learn. I really, really do care about these people. So I need to know what their spouse's name is, what their kids' names are, where they're from, who referred them. We make that to be a really important part to memorize. And it does take time. I mean, we'll have thousands of patients, over the course of the years. And that really helps. Now, it does take a little bit of time. The first couple of weeks, I'm trying to kind of learn it, but it is just really just straight effort to know that. There's nothing worse than when someone walks in the room and I don't know who they are. I hate that feeling. It's like so it's also probably just done to ease my anxiety about it, because I'm definitely a natural introvert who has to be extroverted, to do this type of job. So it's a skill that you just had to develop, and it's important. Because if you don't know who you're treating, you're not going to probably care as much subconsciously. So that's pretty important.
So environment, knowing people's name,
knowing the name 100%, and knowing a lot about them that they care about,
right.
And really importantly, when someone comes in, so if you're a new patient and you're going to say, hey, I'm coming in for whatever, my hip hurts. Okay. The next question is, okay, but what does that stop you from doing? So I want to know why they're here. Not because their hip hurts. Their hip hurts because they, and it's not allowing them to play with their grandkids. It's not allowing them to run like they used to their entire life. It's not allowing them to, whatever it is. There's something really important about that. So a patient in my office isn't better until their hip pain goes away, but also so that they can do these things.
The thing they want to do.
And learning and memorizing those things is really fun, because it gets the conversation off of this hurts today and more on, hey, look what I was able to do. Because people do also forget the journey. They come in, they're a 9 out of 10, they can't walk. And if you just talk about pain every time, 2-3 weeks in, they come in, how are you doing? Oh, this hurts here. Okay, but you crawled in here, you're playing your sports again. So we try to always reframe it back to functional things. What could you do now that you couldn't do before? That's a really, impactful thing. So we care about achievement and functionality, not about whether you're in pain or not. Being in symptom or devoid of symptom doesn't mean you're healthy or not. Same person who feels great on Monday and croaks of a heart attack on Tuesday, they weren't healthy on Monday. They just didn't know they weren't healthy.
Right.
So functionality is much more important for us than whether they're in pain or not. It's such a low hanging fruit, and I try to get the patients away from that. There are places they can go to for like aches and pains, similar to like what you do with like an osteopath or a functional doctor. We're just doing it, without medicine.
Right. And then
in conjunction with them.
In terms of yourself, so being, like I've always thought of this, for you, is that, like you just said, you're seeing almost 200 people a day sometimes. What does it look like for you to prepare for that? Because
you have to,
you have kids, you have a wife, like you have a life too outside of work.
Yeah.
And if you come in a bad mood, we're all going to know it. So, but you don't.
You have to.
What do you do?
Man, it's almost like playing a sport. Like you have to get there early. First and foremost, you can't start at 8:30 with patients and walk in 8:29. It's going to be awful. It's never going to work. So I get there at minimum 34 minutes early. I'll do like some general morning routine stuff that people typically do. Try to journal, try to get my head right for what I'm trying to do, try and move a little bit, get my headspace right. And then I treat it like quarters or like halves of a game. So the day gets split up. I get there early. I'll take some supplements, usually something like a nootropic of some sort. We'll start with the patients. We work hard through the morning. And then at lunch, I don't go home and watch, TV or whatever. I'll sit there, I'll eat, I'll move a little bit, I'll meditate, I'll prepare myself for the second half of the day and then do that. And then as you break that up, it makes the day much easier because you're not letting the day run together, and you're always kind of loading yourself, which is a pretty important thing. It's exhausting, don't get me wrong. A chiropractic is an interesting job because you're like a really blue collar, white collar kind of guy. You're doing physical labor, but you're doing it in a setting, so it is a problem that chiropractors struggle with. There's a lot of disability in chiropractic. There's a lot of burnout in chiropractic. There's a lot of people who just can't hack it. There's a lot of people who just can't take it anymore. So because you're not just physically demanding, but it's emotionally demanding. You're managing humans. You're dealing with what they're dealing with. You're listening to them. So there's a lot, exactly the same you guys have to deal with. So you have to always make sure that because you're right. Patients can tell, when you're off, so that you're always doing the right things to make sure.
And we're selfish.
Right.
So what I mean by that is we don't, and let's just keep it real. We don't care what's going on with you. We're there for us.
Right.
So it's like, if you're in a bad mood, you're like, wait a minute, what about me? I'm the patient.
And that's what I talk to my staff about a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm very good at it. I've been doing it for years, but they're not always as good at it. It's hard. to not wear like your emotions in your sleeves, but it's not fair to the patient either to get a lesser visit that day or lesser care because whatever I'm upset about, that's
right, exactly.
That's absurd. I mean, even I was watching the Dolphins game last night. It was a disaster. And there was a time in my life where I would show up grumpy like on Monday because the Dolphins lost, which is so stupid, really, at the end of the day. Now I'm like, okay, that's gone, whatever it is. Because the chiropractor can work through. I mean, I've worked through food poisoning. I've worked through a broken rib. I blew my Achilles. I worked through that. I've worked with before COVID, we used to work with the flu and that type of stuff, just kind of to get your headspace right. I'm surely have probably worked with COVID and not knowing I had COVID. I'm sure, how many times have people probably had it? But you have to just be able to separate your personal stuff from being the healer, essentially, and the leader of the office, which you're doing simultaneously.
And when you decided to open up your own place, kind of take us back to that time frame and like what that, because I know that was a big undertaking. Yeah. I mean, you're massively successful now, but people don't remember the early days.
Real scary. Real scary. So I worked, I got out of school, I worked for a chiropractor who was, by all means, a very skilled chiropractor. Things went poorly at the end, obviously, but incredibly skilled, incredibly talented. And I was there with him for about 7 years. I had always wanted to open my own practice, but it's a daunting, you don't really learn business in school at all. Like you just kind of have to like learn it as a person. So I searched. Where I am now, that space was empty for a couple of years. And I would walk by it every single day. Look in, I'd walk by it, oh man, I don't know how to do this. I'd walk by it, I don't know how to do this. And then eventually I had met my wife. We weren't like engaged yet, but I definitely, like when you met Fee and you guys got serious, it's more about providing, like what kind of life do you want to give this person? I mean, I knew like she was the one. So then I was like, okay, well, this isn't about me and my fears and my whatever. I've got to do this. I have no choice. Something I'm really good at is being able to walk into scary, unknown, dangerous situations and just do it because you just plod forward. It always kind of works. So I decided to go for it. I'd saved up a little bit of money. I got an angel investor who was my uncle who said he would do it, but only in my situation, I would only take it from him if we did it like an actual standard bank loan with interest. I didn't want like a handout, from family. So he helped me through that, and it was a nightmare. I mean, how many places you built out. The build out, we had a 3-month, without rent where they would help us, and the build out took a year and a half. It was a nightmare. I went 3 times over budget. My checking account was at 0. My credit cards were maxed out. It was horrifying. But
by the way, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you because we've all been through it.
It's horrifying.
If you've done any kind of build out, that's exactly what happens.
But what I did know was that I knew it would work. I knew I had enough of a connection to people in the city. I had built up enough patience at the space that we were at where I knew it would at least, I didn't know I would get to where I am now. And this is kind of wild to think about in hindsight because the goalposts just keep moving. If you would have shown me what things look like now, then I would be doing cartwheels, crying, hysterical. And now like things are very good, but I'm still kind of, oh man, what's the next thing? Where's the next thing? So that's kind of interesting with business. We ended up getting it open in November of 13, and then it just compounded. It took off. It was great. It's been amazing. COVID was interesting. We've had certain things, but there's never been a moment where, since then, where we've really been in any danger. It's always kind of grown because it's a referral-based practice. Because it's Miami Beach is not a big town. It's a small town.
Right.
There's rarely a room that I'm going to walk into where they're not going to know at least who I am, or I'm not going to know one of the people in there, as a patient. It's kind of a cool place. So as long as you're good at what you do and you're ethical and you're honest, like it's going to grow. The build out was terrifying. I don't even know if I would do another one. I've talked about it. I almost opened a spot in South Miami a few years ago, and I drove down and back, and I was like, nope, I was not doing that because I live 2 blocks from my office. Right. So my life, the only time I drive is today, but or if I have to take my kids to school.
Did you bring the muscle car today?
No. Thank God, man. This traffic here.
It's crazy, right?
Man.
Yeah, Fridays too.
No, I haven't driven in through the Design District or wherever we are now.
Wynwood, yeah.
Wynwood in a long time, man.
No,
it's a
wild.
nightmare.
It's wild.
It's just people.
There's just construction and closed roads.
It's cool, but But
it's good for business.
Yeah, my beach is not a trafficy place for the most part. It's just a chill, kind of vibey place.
Everybody on their skateboards and rollerblades, just
Hopefully.
living life.
Yeah, it's well, something like that.
So other than the build out, like I know it hasn't been perfect, for the last 11 years. Has there been anything, what's been your biggest pain point as a business owner and as a leader for your organization?
That's interesting. There's a lot there. Well, as you know, initially it's just you and your wife, and then it's your kids, and then there's this kind of interplay between building and growing and your home life. Like, I don't have to travel for work. I'm not really away that much, but there are times when, like, I get home, I leave in the morning, the kids are asleep. I get home and the kids are asleep. That's painful. Hiring and letting go, allowing other doctors to come in and handle it, and then you not being the guy is the next logical step, which we're doing a little bit more of. But I do have issues with that. Like, I want to, maybe that's an ego thing. I'm not really sure, but you want to be there, you want to be hands-on, you want to make sure that's happening. I don't vacation nearly enough. That's a problem that I'm working on, because when you leave, things can still run, a little bit.
Right.
I'm not there. The office runs, but not the same. And again, I should probably just start practicing with that a little bit more, because I do have a doc who works right now who's good. So I certainly could just leave. So I'm starting to do a little bit more of that. Finding the balance between, work and life, but also, also the biggest thing that we ever had was, because of how rough insurance was, we decided, we're done with insurance. We're going to move towards this out of network, more self-pay, kind of situation. And not only that, we're not going to take patients who want to just come and get cracked, a couple times. We're gonna be an office that does what we call restorative work. You're going to come in, we're going to do an assessment. You've got a little bit of work to do. We're going to take some x-rays. We're going to make sure that you're perfect. We're going to take some new x-rays. Then you can come in, as needed. So this is a very niche type of practice. This happened 2020. I went to a seminar on how to kind of run this appropriately, and our flight home got canceled because COVID hit. So I show up at work the next, so I take another flight the day after, and now it's COVID. No one is in the office. We're seeing 3 people a day for some period of time because the whole city shut down, and we've dropped out of insurance, and we're only taking patients who are doing restorative care. That was horrifying. But then, again, that first few weeks was horrifying, and then the right type of people were in the office, and then it just took off. We grew compoundingly for the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That year, we doubled the practice, and then since then, it's been great, because energetically, you're getting the right type of patients. It's hard, these places that just do, hey, my neck hurts, I need to get cracked ones. That's hard to manage. A lot of energy there, and the patient's not going to get better. Right. They're going to feel temporarily better. And what happens is, if the patient comes in and is hurt, doesn't want to do the work to fix it, and they come in a few times, ultimately it's going to come back. And what's going to happen is, the conversation with a friend is going to be, hey, you went to that chiropractic, what happened? Oh, it didn't work. They're not going to say, I didn't do what he told me to do. Yep. I didn't follow through. I didn't do my homework. He's not going to say, I only went 3 times. So that's a hard stand that we had to make. And we'll refer. It's not like we just send them on the street. We'll refer to these places that just do temporary care. These are all scary things. But again, moving forward into the scariness and the things that in your heart that you need to do, and being comfortable with that, being really comfortable with being uncomfortable has really helped, because it is terrifying in business to make steadfast decisions that in the long run will be great, but in the interim, you're turning patients away. Like, at times, it's pretty wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're playing the long game.
Right.
Which I love.
And you want them to have results more than anything else. It's, you just can't get somebody better with an adjustment. You see on TikTok, like, oh, I'm fixed. The way that neuroplasticity works and the way that the body changes, you have to have some compounding effect to structurally change the body and get the brain to recognize it and to heal. This one adjustment feels nice, but it may even make them sore. Like, they're not going to, get better. So it requires a little bit of work initially.
Right.
Yeah. Unless a patient is someone like you who's been adjusted their entire life, and you take films of them and they look relatively pretty good, which you do for the most part, except for like some football stuff, then that kind of patient can do okay with just coming in for wellness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, like, the habits related to your practice that teach your kids? Not only like starting chiropractic at an early age, but also, the way you've decided to live your life, and then how does that connection go down to your kids?
Yeah,
and
it's kind of cool.
your
So,
wife?
our kids were born at home, which was a wild kind of experience. They were adjusted at birth, which was kind of amazing. They didn't have sugar and a bunch of garbage for the first 2 years of their life. They were raised in a way that was appropriate. They have always been about movements and about natural healing, and not necessarily running to give them medicine the second something happens. Don't get me wrong, we have a pediatrician, these type of things. But my kids have a really clear understanding that of the power of the body, which is what we talk about. And then in conjunction with that, knowing that you can audit and change your life based on how things are doing. They're incredibly healthy kids. They've really never had any serious issues. My son, which you have a son similar age, does not have any regard for life. So he is always bleeding and bruised or whatever. But that's kind of a fun thing. I don't limit them from really doing anything, because I want them to kind of have these experiences. I don't want to be an overwhelming, oppressive, parent. Don't do this, don't do that. They're not wild banshees, but if we're at a wedding and they run out on the dance floor, let them go. They want to talk to someone, let them talk to someone. I just don't want to. I was a shy child for a number of reasons. My mom was pretty just typical Jewish mom, very or whatever. Sadie's mom was very similar. She has one of these tiger moms. So we try to be positive influence on the kids, but let them be kids. There's a book called Wild at Heart. It talks about it. Just let them be these kind of wild, fun kids. And in conjunction with this kind of more natural lifestyle, it tends to work out. That was kind of went around a bunch.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I think it's interesting because you see all these, especially in this social media world and being dads, we're constantly being fed these tips and stuff. And I love the ones that I see where it's kids were never meant to sit in a chair and be still at 4 years old, and we're yelling at them be still. It's absurd.
Yeah, my son is
it's
5
absolutely
now,
absurd,
and he's still in this play type of school because I understand that this I'm not trying to play medical doctor here, but these kids get put into desks at 4 years old and they sit there all day and they wonder why they have these attention issues. The way the boy's brain works, and females to a certain extent, they can handle it a little bit better. It requires movement and it requires exploration, and it requires and they're losing this ability to express themselves, and it's horrifying. Most countries don't plop kids at a school desk at 3-4 years old. Sometimes we have to do it. It is what it is. But you always want them to be, even where my daughter goes, they're very focused on movement. They have multiple things during the day that's exercise based to make sure that their brain is developing appropriately, which is incredibly important. It's a nightmare to me to think about them just sitting at a desk all day. Half the schools don't even have recess anymore.
Right.
They're they also aren't eating well at all. It's a real scary thing. You wonder why the kids now are doing so. Man, we have kids come in already with horrible posture from cell phones and screen time and iPads, inabilities to focus. They're all over the place. There's a really scary thing happening. I'm sure Ivan talked about it a little bit with kids, and it's not incumbent on us to fix those kids or to worry about what the future looks like. It's incumbent on us to raise kids that will ultimately thrive amongst those other kids. That's the only way to do it. People ask me all the time, aren't you scared to have kids in this world? No, because the world needs good kids. So that's our job, is to make good kids who will thrive and lead in a world where maybe some kids are going to have some disadvantages because of just not knowing. Parents don't, I grew up eating McDonald's and cinnamon buns and Pop-Tarts when I was a little kid. They just didn't know any better. But also those things were healthier back then than they are now. Yeah. So it's scary. I think our job as a parent is
you grew up way better than me. My parents didn't let me eat any of that stuff.
I think our job as a parent is to raise a better kid than yourself, ultimately.
No, to me, you always want to leave the next generation better than you found it. Right. So exactly what you just said. Right. It's our responsibility to raise a better version of us. Yeah. And my dad did the best that he can do, and then I take what he gave to me, and then I try to improve on that. And hopefully, it just keeps getting better.
And I audit myself all the time. I'll have these moments where I just sit in bed at night, have some anxiety, am I good? Am I doing it good? Am I doing it right? Am I a good dad? man, like, and I think that's a good sign because I think there's a lot of apathetic parents who are just like, whatever, here's the iPad. I think it's better to be harder on yourself and audit yourself to make sure that you're doing the right things, because it is easy to have a long day. Oh, you did podcasts, you worked out, you did whatever, and go home and like you're tired and just like give the kids the iPad and scroll on Instagram. It's really easy to do that.
Yeah,
it's really, really easy to do that.
It's easy, but that's pathetic.
Yeah,
so, I come home and my son's like, pool,
yeah.
and so we got to go swimming. It's like,
you have no choice.
Exactly.
We only have so much time.
Right.
People like my kids will sleep in the bed sometimes. People be like, oh, why? What are your wife gonna do? Because I'm like, because there's gonna be one time where they're not gonna want to.
Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you an interesting story. So, my son is sleeping with me right now because we just have a newborn.
Yeah.
And my dad said that if he could do it all over again, he would have let us sleep in the
Absolutely.
bed.
Have you noticed that your son and you've gotten closer since your daughter was born?
Oh, for 100%. Like way closer.
That was really cool.
Yeah. He says daddy, like my wife doesn't like it. He says daddy like all day long. Being a
dad is interesting because the mom is so important and they're around them so much more initially. And there's this, they're just going to want the mom more at the beginning. So you have to have no ego about it. It's tough at the beginning. My son, up till recently, would kick me off a bridge to get to my wife. Like it's pretty wild. So you have to understand that like there's that from 0 to however old, whatever it is, that mom-son relationship is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Then as he, moves to that next phase, whatever it is, 5 to teenager, that's when he's gonna look to you, to guide him.
We had an interesting time though with 7 because he was born during COVID.
Yeah.
So he was born February 7th, and then March 17th they locked us down.
Yeah.
So I actually had an interesting. As a dad, I was actually around way more than most dads.
Yeah.
So for 3 months, it was like 24/7.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a reason why we have like such a close relationship.
I love it. He's how old now? 4?
Cool. He's 4. Yeah.
He's 4. That's good. So
he's doing jiu-jitsu. He's doing soccer. To your point earlier, we're trying to get him to move as much as possible.
Our
He
kids
loves
are in
swimming.
everything.
Yeah.
My daughter does boxing and jiu-jitsu and ice skating and tennis and whatever else, horseback riding, all those kind of things.
Oh, wow.
Sterling is young, he's 5, but he does jiu-jitsu, and we just got him into football, flag football.
He looked good out there.
Yeah, he's we'll see. Hopefully he gets his mom's genetics.
I mean, he's so energetic.
Funny because he's they're competitive. So so you have to like want them to be competitive, but also like this is a learning process.
Yeah.
You're not. Both my kids think that they're gonna the first day they do something they're gonna be good, and they're mad when they're not good. They freak out and they cry and whatever. And I'm like, man, guys, like anything in life takes time. Whatever it is, whatever skill that is, like you have to be okay with sucking at something, initially. Yeah. But my daughter takes to it. She's really regimented. It's pretty wild. She's really good. My son, he's a little, but like he'll be great. But like we're just getting him into these type of things. And so sort of not to specialize them. How kids really struggle when they get too specialized off the bat. You're going to be a baseball player. We're going to play baseball every day until you're 18. Like, hey, there's a burnout too.
Right.
I don't want to make my son play football because I didn't make it, in the NFL. I want him to play football because it's important, to play these team sports. So I think about that too. Like maybe he doesn't want to play any sports. So that's fine. But as long as he's moving and athletic, my wife is very athletic. So it looks like he's got her abilities, which is good. My daughter's
scary in a good way.
Scary in a good way.
Sadie's a beast.
She's a beast. Yeah, she's an absolute beast. Oh my God, it's hilarious. And
how is she? How is she doing?
She's great. She's sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
That was weird. She's just
it happens. It's the mic and the camera. It makes everybody.
She's just a man. Fuck. Sorry.
It's all right.
She's just a perfect.
We love Sadie, so
perfect mom.
Yeah.
Like she was built to be a mom. It's incredible. And this is why I get really upset with like the way the world is, where there's this like argument between like mom and career, and this has to be like this big battle. Like if you want a career, that's great, but it's totally okay to just be an amazing mom. Like she's like, you don't know what they're gonna be like when you meet somebody. She's a great wife, she's amazing, but you don't know until like the babies come.
Yeah.
And, like she just has this limitless energy and this like just non-stop focus with the kids and this love, and it's just, man, it's wild.
I say that don't get me all emotional. I say that our wives' best attribute is watching them be moms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you see your wife with your kids, that's like the sexiest thing you can see, because
dude.
it's the love that they're giving them is so like, it's just another love. I mean, it's more than love they give us, right? You know?
Yeah.
But that is like what makes it so special.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to just be a spectator in that moment, and not even be a participator. Like you're just watching beauty, you know, because it's that, like right now, Sage is like glued to the tit, you know, like it's just her and, you know, basically, I mean, I get her, you know, just a little bit to your point earlier about the, you know, the early stages of the relationship. And everybody asks me, you know, do you feel different having a girl? And I'm like, we're not there yet. You know, I'm not there yet.
But you will.
But I will be.
A daughter is crazy.
Everybody says that.
Crazy. You know, my son's is my dude, you know, but like I would become Batman and rip through the city and take the whole city out for my daughter. You know, like it's pretty wild. I got real, I mean, that would just happen. I probably cried in my life twice ever until I had a daughter. And then now I'm like the worst. every movie, there's a dad and a daughter or whatever. It's a wild, you'll see it'll come. It comes. It's the same love. It's just a different, you know, thing. A daughter unlocks something in a dad that you didn't know you had.
One of the things she's doing now is she wasn't doing earlier, but she's 3 months now. And now when she looks at me, she smiles like really big. Yeah. And it's so cool. It's like, oh my gosh, she knows.
Whenever someone is like telling me, or with my patients, like, I don't want to have kids. I'm like, okay.
I just heard that. Yeah. I was at my physical therapy. Shout out to Alex. Yeah. Force PT. Yeah. And there was a guy on the other table, and he was just talking about like he doesn't want kids, and they're gonna slow him down, and they're too expensive. He just went on and on and on. And I'm just laying there going, he has no idea what he's talking about. Things that they think
they have to say, but. Man, you know what? You can't explain it to someone ever. Like my brother, you know, they waited, and then they had kids. But like, there's no way to articulate it to somebody until they've experienced it. It's just a different level of. There's no thing. There's no vacation. There's no car. There's sitting in the south of France. There's nothing like that is close, even close to one incredible moment with your kid. Yep. Nothing, not even close. I don't care what anybody says.
This morning, before we went to school, we had this hug, like me and my son, that was like epic. Yeah. You know, it was because he was just like squeezing me and he didn't want to let go. Yeah. And you know, that's what you're talking about. It's like you can go look at the most beautiful view of some country, but that's not gonna feel the same.
Well, and don't get me wrong, it's not easy by any means.
No, hell no, it's not easy. But
it's hard
work.
Right.
But to me, that's life.
But like everything is hard work.
Everything
is easy.
Like anything easy is not worth it.
Are you gonna let Seven play football?
So, yes.
I'm always interested to ask this.
But I would say yes. But I would also say I will be. I'm so like. So I feel like, again, expert is like such a you know.
I mean,
arrogant thing to say. But I feel like I'm very, very, very knowledgeable of what it takes to be successful at anything, really, but especially football. Yeah. And I actually went to my son's, I actually went to my nephew's football game. Yeah. And being there, like, brought up so many memories and so much, you know, just joy. Yeah. And Seven was there watching, and he was enjoying it. And watching my brother watch his son out there.
There's so much besides the sport that you learn from that sport, you know, the camaraderie and dealing with problems. And
that's what I was, so that's exactly what I was about to say is that, so my brother and I were saying that if there was somehow that you could allow a 12-year-old boy to know what a 47 and a 45-year-old men feel like watching them, knowing that we'll never be able to do that again, I think you would see a completely different kid out there. Because I think obviously there's no way to know that. But like, I gave a speech to my high school football team, and that's kind of how it led, is that we would do anything to be back on that field and still doing it. So just that alone, like you said, like overcoming adversity, leadership, you know if you're going to be a leader in that setting. Right. Like you will. I knew when I was in 6th grade and they moved me up to the junior varsity, and as soon as I stepped on the field, and everybody was listening to me, I knew I was going to be a leader, like my whole life. Like that's just how it happens.
I was asking this the other day, how do you replicate that feeling as an adult? It's hard to do. Like, for instance, I started doing boxing because you can compete a little bit. You can push yourself into that place. You can get some of those endorphins, and it's still safe. You know, I'm not fighting a real fight. We'll never know what it feels like to play a sport like that again to that extent. So do you feel that in business? How do you achieve that? Because you need it, that playful, not masculine, but because there's feminine athletes who are way better, badasses. But how do you do that? Did you have any idea? Have you tried? Have you thought about it?
For me, it's certainly not necessarily competitive, but I would say fitness in general. Like being 47 and knowing that you can crush all these 22-year-olds that work out all day long is kind of makes you feel good, I
think about that sometimes. Like how to just, it's such an important feeling.
Yeah. I would say everything that I do from a biohacking standpoint also, like, the cold plunge, the other day I had a 24-year-old trainer come in and he reached out to me and wanted to shadow my day. So he showed up at 4:30 in the morning and wanted to see what my morning looked like. And so I put him through a workout, and then we did the sauna, and then we did the cold plunge. And when he jumped into the cold plunge, he jumped right out. Yeah. Like literally, and was like
your cold plunge
freaking out.
Really cold though.
And that alone in that moment, like selfishly, like you kind of feel like an immediate badass because you're like, okay, like this is, what is this guy doing? And then to his credit, he got back in and stayed in. But little things like that are like little pats on the back or whatever that keep you kind of going. As far as like the real competitive nature, for me, it's building this brand business. And it's working. It's every single day is a problem to solve. Okay. So every single day is a puzzle, and trying to figure out, how am I going to raise the next 4 million? How am I going to do this? How am I going to, like right now we're building out this massive facility, and the guy that's building the stairs is 3 weeks late. Yeah. Like, how do I solve for that? Because in my early days, it was just yell and scream. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't work. Right. So, and I learned that early on. So now it's about having a meaningful conversation where you're aggressive, but you're not yelling at them, and you're not threatening them, but you're aggressive. Right. And how are you doing that? Well, it's you learn that skill of having a tough conversation with someone that you've paid a lot of money and they've missed their deadline. Mm-hmm. And I thought like today's conversation went very well. Mm-hmm. And then also learning in general. So trying to learn as much as possible to be the best version of this CEO founder that I am now. And so that is competitive because it's like, I get this all the time from people like, have you read this book? And then I'm like, yes, I have. It's like to be able to say yes most of the time is kind of cool because you're on top of your shit.
Do you have less time now for that?
Yes, but I try to make time always. And it's always, most of the time it's audio. Most of the time it's in the truck. Yeah. It's if I'm going to Fort Lauderdale and I'm stuck in this Miami traffic, but for the most part or early mornings. Yeah. I also started to do one long walk a week. So instead of going to the gym every single day, I do one like long walk, like at least an hour or 2 hours. Wow. Just listen. Yeah. Sometimes not listen. Yeah. Sometimes listen to myself. Right. I'll just walk and won't listen to anything. So
this is funny. It was a comedy skit, but it made so much sense. He was talking about mindfulness and how everyone's.
Oh, you sent me that.
Yeah, it's dude, it's so funny, but it's true. When we grew up, we didn't have to have mindfulness because we were mindful. We didn't have a computer and the internet in our pocket. So you just had moments where you would sit and you would think and your brain would work and ideas come to you. They used to, I listen to a lot of like historians. They talk about these like big time people throughout the Churchill, these kind of guys, where they would just sit in a chair like in the darkness for 45 minutes a day and just think and let wherever our ideas come from, whatever that source is. So that space now is typically filled with Instagram, scrolling, whatever.
Well, the joke that he made was, when's the last time you took a dump without your phone?
It's true.
When's the last time you went to the bathroom without your phone? And
it was so
it's
funny.
Laughable because it's so true. Like,
but it's true. So I try to, and not always, just think, because these are where these ideas come. I'm a firm believer, it's hippity dippity, that we're sourcing our ideas from some higher place. I don't think it's happening inside your head. I think you're getting it from somewhere, whether that's your higher self, whether it's God, whether it's, whatever you guys believe in. But you have to allow those to happen. It's the same reason why multiple inventions will come out at the same time, and they're all very similar. I think we're getting, it's just whether you're willing to move forward into that place, and when you get that direction, because most people will be like, most people are like, okay, I can do that. I can't. Some people like, I think I can do it, but quit. And then there's special people like you who just keep like moving into it, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, for me, there's some sick, like, I call it this, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse, because it's literally, as soon as I'm finished with something, it's like, what's the next thing? And I will say the Little River situation has definitely made me slow down that thought process, because it's so massive and I'm taking on so much that it definitely is like, I think I'll be not satisfied is never a word I want to use, but at least in a place where I'm like, okay, like we can run with this for a little bit, so.
I have a mentor who introduced me to this Navy SEAL who did some time with us, some phone calls, conference calls. Very interesting. So he talked about how the biggest problem that we have now, like what you just talked about, is everyone's reaching these moments of achievement and then quickly the next thing. So the goalposts always move. And it's really unrewarding, because you just have consistent achievement and then next thing. You don't really get to celebrate like your wins, and that's really problematic. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he said what you need to do is, yes, have the achievements, but the idea is that you're in this like coordinated action that's sustainable, that you can do over time with people like that you care about, this whole group that you have and your family, consistently moving towards goals, or whatever, as opposed to just like another gym, another gym.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting the way you said it. I thought about that a lot, because the truth is, you're right. Like the next thing, I wanted to see 100 patients a week. Great, now 200, now 300. Great, now 400, whatever. Like, when does that stop? How many gyms do you have to have before you're fulfilled? What's the end goal? Where's that coming from? It's so interesting to think about. I was watching Kevin Hart the other day. I was like, what is he? He just doesn't stop opening businesses. Everything, it doesn't stop ever. Like, when does he stop?
Yeah.
What does he have to do when he can just like be like at peace? Or is that just how you have to be? Is his brain need that? It's such an interesting thing, to think about.
I definitely think there's something to be said about like and I would say what God has given us.
Right.
Is that, like, for me, I know for a fact, when you're put on this earth to do like great, extraordinary things, and then you feel like you still haven't really done that yet. Yeah. So then you're always just pushing. And that's, and there's a calmness in my storm.
Right.
And what I mean, like, I always say my wife is the calm to my storm, and that's true. But there's a calmness I feel when I'm solving all these problems.
Yeah.
When I'm like, okay, man, you gotta do this, that's when I'm the calmest. When there's nothing going on and everything looks great, that's when I'm a nervous wreck. So it's like, I love the pressure. I love building. I love serving. Like, I love when one of my staff has an issue, and it's tough because it's a human. Yeah. And I love helping them solve whatever's going on in their life that's making them like, crazy or whatever it is, So that whole thing, the human dynamic, the building, the creative side, like the last person that I just took on a tour to it, they were like, "You designed all of this?" And I said, "Yes." Yeah. And they were like, how do you do that? And I was like, it's just in my head. Like, it's just like, I see it and then I do it. So
and you always had this?
Yeah. So early on, my mom kind of like really helped instill this. I mean, she always says like, if we lived in LA, I'd be super gay, because she took me shopping all the time with her. She was very into fashion. She was very into interior design. So she took me to go pick out the couch and pick out the mirror and whatever. And so she would help me. I mean, she would ask me to help design the house. Right. Like, what are we going to pick these drapes out or whatever? So I was doing that like even with the football. And so then football, I was always the guy that cut the shirt off, wore the long sleeve, did one glove, one wristband on the, like, I was always like, I was the first kid to come to school with the like overalls, you know,
Right.
like just doing stuff like
man.
that, you know, like
With like the one.
the one thing
yeah.
down, or like me and, you know, the only.
Were you a Cavarici guy?
Oh, what?
Cavaricis?
What the
You know what Cavaricis are?
No, what's
You
that?
guys are too young. No.
Well, we're the same, man. What's Cavarici?
There are those pants, like in the 90s or 80s.
The
like
parachute pants?
Pleated parachute pants or whatever.
Parachute pants.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
call them parachute
Oh,
pants.
okay.
Yeah.
No,
So we did the
Alabama,
parachute pants. We did the members only jackets. We did. I had Michael Jackson's jacket, the zipper jacket.
Yeah.
I would wear it to school.
Yeah.
Like the real zipper jacket.
I think there's something to that. A lot of people I know who are high achievers are also into something about fashion is interesting. The way it fits together, like as a puzzle, it's interesting. I buy half of Sadie's clothes. Like I'll see stuff that I'm interested in it. It's it's
No, I'm
kind of weird.
fascinated with women's
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah.
Fascinated.
I think it's the best.
Women's fashion and women's photography. Like
Women are so lucky. They can look so much.
like I
cooler.
love it.
Yeah.
Like it's because it's
It's
like it's
dope.
just beautiful. Like to
yeah.
see, you know, the layers and all the stuff.
it's
So
super
it's really cool. Yeah.
Guys we're pretty basic.
Yeah, we're
Yeah. I buy all of her stuff.
white t-shirt and jeans
Yeah.
and we're good.
Yeah. I think it's awesome.
Well, let's we're gonna head over to the new place, but before we do that, you know, one of the things that I truly mean this, like you've been kind of a staple in my life for years, years and years, and you know, you've always made time for me, you've always helped me, and I just appreciate that. Just want to give you your flowers, you know, today. You've always connected me to certain people. I feel like we have a really cool circle, you know. I know you have probably a larger circle than I do, but I don't have a big circle, just so you know.
Well, a tight, closed circle,
Yeah.
and then like it expands out.
Yeah.
It's impossible to have a huge, close circle.
No,
I
it's
mean, I don't
impossible.
know.
Yeah.
Especially with the way the world is now. It's a little divisive. So you kind of have to keep.
Well, there's especially men.
Right.
So especially men that we have a lot of responsibilities,
Right.
and so there's only a handful of men that I still like
Right.
on a daily basis stay in contact with.
Yeah.
My brother being the number one person, obviously. My dad, but you're one of those people.
Appreciate
So
it, man.
you know, and I know we get busy and don't do as much as we would like, but you've always been there. And then secondly, so that being said, you know, again, I've been around the chiropractic world a lot, and I would highly recommend your practice. What would you say, because I know you have some young chiropractors already, what would you say to these young chiropractors that are, you know, 20, 25, 26, 27, back when you started, to strive for what you've accomplished, you know?
Primarily, be a chiropractor, and I'll explain what that means. But it's because the cultural authority of chiropractic isn't the same, meaning that you're gonna listen to your primary care doctor. They have that cultural authority. You expect they're, you know, on top of things. There's this, because of the history, and there's this, you know, some nuance with people not understanding, you know, chiropractors. So chiropractors will please by trying to offer as many things as possible. I can adjust you, but I also can stretch you, and I can do acupuncture if you want. If you want, I can do some cupping, and then we can do some dry needling.
Right.
And then I can do some nutrition, or these are all important things. But if you're not, what separates a chiropractor from a PT, or from, in this country, DOs are more like medical doctors, but from an osteopath, like in other countries, is the specificity and the philosophy and the art of chiropractic. And if you don't want to do that, then this isn't the profession, you know, necessarily for you. You can, if you want to run a business, then you can do any kind of business in the world. But this isn't an art that requires intent, you know, and focus and understanding who you are. And if you can't do that, it's really difficult. Those are, you know, there are people who need some of those, you know, type of people, but it's impossible to be a great chiropractor if you don't understand what a chiropractor is and you don't truly think that you're a great chiropractor. That sounds cliche, but it's true. In every case that I've seen this, it starts with like in here and knowing that you really know what you're doing and that you're confident in it and you believe in it. And that's what you have to do. Then after that, you're good.
Boom.